United Heavy, runway 26, clear for takeoff.
Clear for takeoff, runway 26, heavy for United Heavy.
Welcome to the Aeropedia Podcast. I'm Ashwin.
And I'm Peter. And today's topic is aviation finance. We have the pleasure of having David Yu with us. Professor David Yu is a professor of practice and finance at New York University Stern School in Shanghai and is a recognized expert and thought leader in cross-border investing, financing, valuation, real assets, and corporate governance. David is also chairman of Asia Aviation Value Advisors and China Aviation Valuation Advisors. He has a double major BA and an MS from Johns Hopkins University, an MBA from New York University School of Business, a PhD in finance from the University of Nottingham Business School, and studied at Peking University's Guanghua School of Management and National University of Singapore's School of Business. So, in this world of finance, Ashwin, how do you make $1 million in the airline industry?
I guess you start with $1 billion.
Let's find out.
David, welcome to the Aeropedia Podcast. Really nice to have you with us. And a lot of the folks we had on the podcast so far have been very operational, right? So this is a great perspective to have, more on the finance and the money side mostly, right? So just walk us through a bit about how does the financing in the aviation industry work in general, and what made you kind of change geographies so much, right? Is it part and parcel of being on that side of aviation?
Look, for younger folks, I think the easiest way to think about finance is the is the orange juice or whatever, substitute that with whatever you like to drink that energizes you, right? Coffee, whatever, tea, etc. And I think ultimately finance gives you a very kind of broad picture on either the operations of an airline, the aircraft in terms of a specific investment and deal, and all the other kind of ancillary effects. So essentially understanding how it works as a business model, whether it be a standalone project or a bigger, broader company or multiple companies in a bigger group. So I think from a younger person perspective, I would say there's two sides. You can go be on the buy side and you can be on the sell side. I'll start on the sell side first. Sell side is you're working for other people. You're their advisors, you're their agents, et cetera, et cetera. But basically you'll see a lot more deals, generally speaking. But you'll be very, very busy. and that's kind of, I think, different than on the buy side. Buy side, look, you'll see a lot of deals, but you'll find a few that you'll really dig in and go down. But the number of deals you execute will be actually less than on the sell side. So pros and cons. But of course, you have a vested interest in grow. Once you acquire it, you're going to grow it and utilize it afterward, whatever your investment thesis is or financing thesis is, and monitoring it as a progression. So different perspectives for kind of earlier stage kind of professions, but you have to, a good investment and finance professional really tries to understand all the various elements along the entire ecosystem, whether it be operations, whether it be technical, whether it be accounting, legal, marketing, revenue management, all the parts, because ultimately you want to understand the business model, right, of whatever you're looking at to analyze.
Wow, interesting. And yeah, I've never thought of it from a buy versus sell perspective as well. So the industry in general is notorious for having really small margins, right? Starting with the airlines, essentially, right? Everything is so volatile and so cutthroat, right? Does that change when you get onto the financing side and you're looking at things from a transactional or investment perspective, right? Are the margins slightly better? Is this aviation market becoming more and more investable?
Well, everyone wants to think that whatever they're investing in and deals are doing, they're going to be high margins and low risk, right? On a risk adjusted basis. So absolutely, everyone wants that. That's what their goals are. That's essentially what their mandates are, right? That's why they're still around. What happens at the very end as this kind of deal or financing progresses is could be a totally different story, right? It could be pro, and it could be even better than what they thought and modeled, and it could get be really really bad to the point where it's entirely written off to zero, right? So there is margins, but ultimately it depends on what style of investing and financing you're doing. Are you doing large volumes and with smaller returns, or are you going to do very very high returns and probably a smaller volume basis? Of course, we all want high volume and high profitability, high margins, right? But that is probably more difficult as people come in and try to eat your lunch and get disintermediate, et cetera. So it is, aviation is a very cutthroat business. But so everyone must have some value add, some special sauce in order to keep their portion of the ecosystem on a financially sustainable point of view.
That's really interesting, David. And I guess current events, there's a lot of hype around the urban air mobility and advanced air mobility sectors, and so there's obviously folks that are dipping their toe there in that industry, part of the industry. Do you have thoughts around how that will play out and where it fits into the broader finance sector?
Absolutely, great question. I've actually basically done advisory work in the space. And have worked with many of the stakeholders in the ecosystem here. But ultimately, AM is still very, very nascent, right? And everyone has, just like I was saying earlier, everyone has a little different kind of bent on what they envision the world will be like at the end of the day. And hopefully these are all kind of progression. By the way, this is all innovation. To me, I'm a big supporter of innovation. But innovation has a lot of cost, right? Because of all this, people are basically investing in these ideas and trying to progress it. Just like AM, where we are today, it's generally at a very, very low level, right? Most products are not fully baked in the sense that, certification is lacking and it's not to the general public. So it's a lot of it's still in that conceptual, I would say, paper stage to prototype, whether the alpha, beta, et cetera, prototyping stage, and really kind of certification stage. That certification stage, super necessary, right? Because without that, the public can't enjoy and use these products. So, how does this kind of work, right? There's going to be a lot more money needed, right? Ultimately, I think, even though people think, oh, there's billions invested in the space, but ultimately, not everyone's going to survive. There's going to be some consolidation. There's going to be people who think that they should be able to get to certification. They need more money. So I think at this point, the people who've raised money at a higher value, basically before COVID and getting now, they're starting. They have a large kind of pool, are doing a good position. People who need money now, raising that next round. Sure, it's just a different environment. VC, I would say a few months ago, was very, very kind of low. People were in a doldrums. Valuations were low. Deals were getting not so much in volume. Today, we're actually getting into a much more positive state. So people are interested in looking at it. People are looking to deploy it. So that's very good for the industry because it still needs a lot more money to survive. But ultimately, you're going to also need not only VC money, which is really dilutive capital, right? That means, equity is going to get diluted down because you're selling equity. But you're also going to need non-dilutive equity, which is basically project finance, leasing, other types of financing. In order to get this, you're going to need to sell residual values, understanding values of these assets and bankability. So there's a lot of education that needs to be done. And I see that as the next few steps that the industry, quote unquote, the AAM industry needs to get to order to have this into a sustainable ecosystem for their products.
So like AAM, are there any other subsectors within aviation do you see that are promising or innovative that sort of will attract certain amount of investment in the near future?
Absolutely. Like from my perspective, I'm looking at a lot of the new innovations that are kind of exciting, and there's a lot of potential. One would be really this blockchain and DeFi, decentralized financing that's coming up, and using a lot of this and as well as fintech and other kind of techniques to basically increase both functionality as well as kind of financing perspective. Trading, could be financing, etc. Another big area I think is interesting is actually space. There's a lot of interest. Space is even farther earlier than AAM where we are today, but they're again similar in that sense. A lot of money has been put in, but that's just the start of it. And that entire ecosystem could be anything, right? From space tourism to commercial. We're getting to the commercial element, which is much more interesting and analogous to aviation. So that to me is there's a lot of things to do there in order to create that ecosystem. So similar things that I mentioned with the AM cycle will also be applicable for the space side.
So just building on that, David, what exactly is decentralized financing, and could you talk about how that would kind of change the industry?
Sure. Let's give a example. So basically, if you think about blockchain, and there's some companies that are doing this. Look, you can there's a blockchain is new, but this concept is not that new, right? A couple of ways you can do it. Blockchain is something that's public. People can see it. You can have a public chain. People can see it. Anyone can see it. You could have private ones where only certain people have access to. But ultimately, all the things that changes, the transactions, whether it be parts, they're recorded and on this chain, and people can verify that it's right. So this would help alleviate some of the fake parts, for example, that are plaguing the system. We're not talking about PMA parts, but basically we're talking about really fake parts here, right? And that would help that. Another way to think about it is aviation is a lot from inception to back to birth, right? From the beginning, birth of the product part to wherever they are. So all the sales, who it's sold by, who it's maintenance by, etc. This needs to be recorded. Well, this will be a great, easy way to record this in an easy, accessible way instead of paper or electronic these days, the cloud. This is an interesting application. There's a bunch of companies that are trying to address this, like Block Aero, for example, is the one that's been working on this idea, but there's many others. And that's one area. The other area that's very kind of applicable is really on the RWA side, the real world asset side, where people are trying to basically mirror using they use real world assets, aircraft or other kind of assets, and put it onto chain and use it as a way to trade it, track it, maintain it. So these are kind of new things that are happening that people are trying to basically get more adoption for. So these are areas that could be very, very interesting for younger folks. And of course, it goes hand in hand with the rise of crypto, right? So what we see now, the SEC has approved ETFs and crypto, especially in Bitcoin and some starting to others. This is getting closer into alternative monetary kind of tools that exist.
On the blockchain topic, are there companies that are focused in exclusively on the aviation sector and building blockchains, or is it more a matter of broader organizations that are touching multiple different industries and utilizing the same type of solution there?
Definitely both. Definitely both. Like I was saying, like my friends at Black Arrow, they're very much focused on aviation, right? And then there's other larger organizations who are looking at this as a subset of kind of their broader kind of a focus on the space.
And is there something unique about aviation that like warrants a different type of solution than in another industry, like auto or something?
Well, ultimately, one is always going to be regulation, right? I think regulation very, very much defines it, whether it be the parts, whether it be, operations, right? And safety. And ultimately, because it's a safety concern, right? Because safety, whoever is going to use aviation aircraft and the various parts that go into that, want to be safe. I want to make sure that there is a level of margin of safety, right? Error there. So, and I want to make sure that's very, very low, and with the redundancies, etc. But I think I think one of the other things is just the complexity of it. There's so many different levels of it in aviation, and that yes, cars would have some of the same basic elements, but you bring it to another degree in aviation and in the systems there. So, so these are, I think, similarities and some differences between these sectors.
Oh, very interesting. I just want to switch gears a bit. You mentioned the Asia Aviation Valuation Advisor group that you've started. So, talk to us a bit more about what kind of work do you do there, and is it, I'm guessing it's very Asian aviation centric, right?
Well, that's how the roots got started. So we are an advisory company with a strong focus on financial advisory as well as valuation. Basically, we started right before COVID, the summer before COVID-19. 2019, and obviously our plans completely changed, right? Just like everyone else's. So what we did throughout COVID was we worked on a lot of restructurings. We helped work on order books. We helped work on their leases, people's financing arrangements for airlines, as well as investors and airlines on their leases, the aircraft leases themselves. We also worked with a couple startup airlines during this period, trying to kick off, and we were very much international, right? So during this time, a lot of work was actually very, very global, right, in nature. So when you say Asia, yes, a lot of it was cross-border Asia, but during COVID, it was just all over the map, right? So I would say our original focus was really cross-border or within Asia, and we have a lot of relationships and a lot of some of our partners, our managing director partners who are focused who are based around Asia, but it has morphed a bit, just like any business. And we try to go where we can help people, we can solve problems, and we can add value, because that's ultimately what people want, right? Otherwise, why would you even need to exist?
Yeah, good point. And then also wanted to talk a bit about your your role as you're teaching, right? So taking a step back, you were so involved with the industry, right? Like you mentioned, you're involved with the financing in different geographies. You've helped airlines, startups, lessors, etc. What made you really get into the teaching side of things to begin with?
Oh, well, it was pretty opportunistic in the sense that NYU was just building the campus there, and I joined very, very early on as one of the first adjunct professors, and then turned full time. And basically, ultimately, from a research and just interest perspective, it's just curiosity. So if you think about ultimately what aviation, not on the airline side, but aircraft asset side, ultimately people say, look, they always make the comparison, oh, it's very, very not as volatile as shipping. Shipping could be very, very volatile. And we see it during the financial crisis. That was the largest, BDI was one of the largest, Baltic Dry Bulk Index was one of the largest indices percentage-wise drops, right? And then the recovery, so forth. And during COVID, it was a boom, right? Period for shipping. So very, very large ups and downs, volatility. But that to me is still a question mark. There's a lot of data, yes, but it's nothing comprehensive. And that was kind of the essence of someone who's interested in valuation, understand values, the drivers of values. What are the characteristics and factors that go into it? How do you try to predict the values with more accuracy and more confidence going forward? And really to use this by all parties, right? From an underwriting perspective, from a financing perspective, but also for people who are not in the industry, who are interested in the industry, but just really aren't comfortable with this asset class, underlying asset class. So that was kind of one of my main theses. I wrote a book on this, aircraft valuation, airplane assets as an investable asset class. So that's on Amazon. I'm going to make a quick plug on it, but that is the characteristics in this study. So I think more and more studies needed. The space is very kind of ripe. There's a lot of things that can be asked. Hard to get data though. It is not as transparent as some others.
And then at these universities, just talk to us a bit about what are you teaching, and what how does the curriculum shape up using some of these courses in what most students are actually studying?
Sure, no problem. So basically, I'm teaching more, I would call it advanced finance classes, whether it be for advanced senior undergrads, as well as master's students and others like executive MBA students. But basically, I have a very kind of applied nature just because of what I'm interested in, what I want to bring to the table really for students. And I want them to have a strong background in finance, right? Understanding how to make models, financial modeling, valuation. This is, one of the main areas, but ultimately, how do you use that? So alternative investments is another area, and project and structured finance. These are classes that I'm teaching, be able to not only have the fundamental background in it, but also how do you use it? How do you understand it? So variety of techniques that I try to employ. I try to use case studies to demonstrate various kind of structures and let the students practice their modeling and valuation perspective, role playing, simulations, guest speakers. You need guest speakers so that people can hear different perspectives, because the more perspectives better you understand of the ecosystem, then you can see where kind of your blind spots are. That's ultimately kind of what risk is, right? You're trying to find those blind spots, but you don't know, and you have to ask the right questions. You're not going to be an expert in everything, but you try to try your best in that sense. So and ultimately, I encourage all the students to get lots of internships and really kind of work, because you need to work and practice these skills in order to be better. One of the things, so a bunch of my students have gotten the ISTAT scholarship over the years. So I'm very, very proud of that. And some of them have gone on to work for major airlines and leasing companies and various aspects. And of course, they all go to other kind of industries, right? Your traditional investment banking, consulting, et cetera. So very, very proud and want to see. And this is, as a teacher, this is my interest, is to help people and try to build that in relation to them. And ultimately, you're going to be mentoring a lot of people, whether formally or informally, right? So that's how I kind of view myself as a teacher and researcher in this respect.
Well, that's great that you're able to do that and help the next generation get interested in the industry and this topic. And I guess that's one question I wanted to lead into, is that, aviation in general has been struggling with getting the next generation of employee interested in the industry. And it's all through different functions within the industry, but specific to finance and that, do you find that you have a lot of students that are inherently interested in aviation? Or do you see ones coming in just to kind of check it out and then they gain interest in it, or maybe there's a big population that just has no interest in it and is just doing it for some other reason. Kind of what do you see in the student body that comes through your school?
Well, NYU is the big school, right? And it's known for as a finance school and has a very good reputation, thankfully. And but ultimately, look, most of the students are more traditionalists, right? They're interested in the normal banking or investment banking or consulting, and that's the norm. Of course, you'll have accounting and but ultimately, aviation, there's every single subsegment that's needed, right? So they just need to be interested in the industry. A lot of them just have no idea, never been exposed to it, etc. There's a very few amount who actually are very, very gung-ho and interested from the beginning. But most people, I would say, are interested in the topic, and then I try to introduce them in this area to see if they're interested, and some of them really kind of pick on. Like, I've had even research assistants who are computer science majors and never really touched this and have gone on to aviation careers afterward. So it is very much, I would say, you have to open their eyes and say, this is not just what you think it is, but it could be really anything within the kind of realm of business that's helpful. If you think about any company needs accountants, finance professionals, whether it be corporate finance, but then in this case, going to be working with a lot of big assets. So, even real estate companies, they're going to need similar kind of techniques. So it's really kind of opening those doors and trying to give them as many options as possible, but trying to drive that passion. And passion ultimately is going to what starts the fire, but you gotta keep going to keep it ongoing.
Yeah, that's a great point. So you've had so much going on all the time in your career, right? Just walk us through what do you have going on right now? What are the cool projects, the ventures, etc.?
I would say, one of the things that I've always tried to do, and I always tell students, is take as much as you can handle projects or responsibilities, and that's how you learn and grow, even in a company, right? A company setting, school setting. But you got to also know that after a certain point, it's too much and you need to kind of downside. So you have to know yourself. You have to know your limits, how much you can take on and actually handle and do a good job, while not just take a lot and do a crappy job and everything. So that's always bad, right? That looks poorly on you. But for myself, look, I'm working a lot. Excuse me. I'm working a lot on kind of innovation at the moment, as you can tell, whether it be AM, space, and I want to see kind of that next generation, because you could see that post-COVID, we are in a next economic cycle that we're coming through. And some of the things that have worked in the past will no longer be the case. And going forward is the only way. Some parts that are integrated, is looking at, I want to look at it from a impact investment perspective, which contains sustainability. I know your company is doing a lot of that focus, but also how do you make everyone's lives better? So as well as make a good return, risk-adjusted return for your investors, because ultimately, if you can't do that step one, well, you can't. There's no step two because they'll move on. So. And your track record will not be so good. So, for myself, I'm looking at new ventures, always looking at new ideas and kind of parse through them and work through them. And this is kind of the fun part, is trying to look through these different areas. So I'm working with various funds. If there are funds out there that are interested in these perspectives, give me a call. Maybe you're coming and give me a call too.
Sounds good. Yeah, thanks for that. And I think there's a lot of listeners that would want to give you a call, right, David? I think just there's so limited expertise in general in the aviation financing side of things. And on top of that, folks will always be curious about how do I learn more and how do I get into some of these courses at NYU, things like that, right? So hopefully we can facilitate some calls coming to you. Cool.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much knowledge. There's actually it's still very small compared to other industries, I would say. So I think there's a lot of work still needed to be done ultimately.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, cool. So we'll transition into kind of the next round where we kind of ask you some software questions, right, and get to know you a bit better. So the first one in that category is name one hard skill and one soft skill that's required to succeed in your role.
I'll start with soft skill, listening. Listening, very important. You try it, you want to listen, understand people's perspectives before you give your own. But ultimately, that's kind of that digesting, right? Understanding perspectives. So I think that's very important. Hard skill. Wow. Gosh, there's a lot of it. I would say hard skill wise, just understanding basic finance and accounting and understand that, because we're talking about finance here, because ultimately you can have the most crazy models, but if you don't have the most basic fundamental things, it's going to be hard to get to that advanced kind of level. So make sure you got your basic ducks, your all these certifications. It's all about getting your basic competencies up to speed, right? And when you get in the real world, it's all about how do you be creative afterward and listen.
Yeah, makes sense. The next
So
one.
aviation trivia is not a hard skill you'd need in finance. Darn.
Yeah,
I'm not sure how good I am on that, but we'll see.
we will see for sure. What's your fondest aviation memory?
Oh, I would say I still, when I was younger, I would say go and get out there the first time when you were very, very young, and really kind of see it. Back then, our first international trip, going to the Pacific, it's just a magical experience, I think, ultimately. And you always kind of have that. But from a professional perspective, it's seeing kind of your work in action. So, my work in a lot of real assets, you can see it. You can say, hey, there's things this company is able to kind of run because of things help with, because you're one of the many integral parts. But that's exciting. So, and hopefully to bring up the next round of students to who can bring it even further.
So what part of aviation do you think is least understood by the general public, and what can they do to learn more?
Well, I think ultimately, if you think about it, most people think that airlines own all their airplanes, and they have no idea there's this thing as a leasing company that exists. And then when you talk about it, they're like, "Oh, interesting." And now we're at 50, depending who you want to talk to, 50 to 55% of the world's aircraft is leased. We're getting past that kind of break even point, right? So I want to basically. It's just a nice thing to people, and people really like planes and watching it fly and perform and safely.
And the last question in this category is, speaking of kind of trips, what's your favorite journey been, right? And describe to us the airline, the flight leg, the cabin class, what aircraft it was, where you were going, etc.
Wow. Lots of memorable experiences. And first off, I would say hopefully not for, business flights are great, but personal trips are even better. And the farther up you go is always nice. But look, you sometimes have some really interesting economy class trips. I'll tell you one time, there was only, we were in a wide body aircraft. This is very interesting. And there was only about 10 people, 10 people in the entire plane. And I think there were more flight attendants than people, I think. And I don't know, this might be interesting and new to people, but we actually had to we can't sit everywhere because we had to make the plane balance, right? So we were told where we could sit throughout the plane to keep the plane balanced, which is you don't think about this sort of stuff, but that was kind of there's a really kind of a memorable experience. There's always been like fun and celebratory flights, but I think that was a really interesting one, I would say. I think and that's a public one, other than some of these demonstration flights that we've had a chance to go to. I think those have been always kind of special to see new aircraft being introduced and showcased around the world.
Yeah, for that empty aircraft leg, do you remember what airline it was and what origin and destination you were flying?
I was going to Hong Kong. I was going to Hong Kong, but it was very, very weird time, and a lot of storms and everything. So, speaking of storms, always keep your seatbelts on. This turbulence, clear air turbulence seems to be more prevalent these days.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, thanks for
Seems
that.
Hong Kong. It's Hong Kong and the 747 are the two things that keep popping up in our podcast, Ashwin.
A lot. Yeah, a lot.
Mine. I think it was an A330. I don't recall exactly, but I actually think it was an A330,
Okay.
but not a 74. But it's still a wide body.
Yeah.
By all definitions.
But I don't know if it's a I don't know how much of it is a cultural thing as well, but I've heard a lot of wide bodies still performing the flights even though their load factor is at like 10%, right? Whereas in many other countries they would just cancel that flight and just ship those passengers to the next one, right? Because that's just economically more viable, and then you can move your network or fleet around a little bit, right? But in Asia, I've seen a lot of these empty-ish flights still being operated.
Well, if you think about it, during COVID, a lot of it was still happening. Well, pilots need to be, they need to get some clock time on the clock, right? They air so that if they didn't fly, they didn't, they were grounded, right? Otherwise, if you think about kind of slots, right, use it or lose it in a lot of place jurisdictions. So people want their slots and time slots. So these are kind of important factors that most people don't realize. Of course, making money is important, like you said. So canceling it would make economic sense, and of course, environmental sense. But a lot of these other kind of factors do play a big part. As hey, if you don't have a slot, well, you can't operate it anymore going forward. You lose it, right? So people are going to keep it. Find ways to keep those routes. So absolutely, but it was just a kind of an interesting one because you don't expect. You're like, that's it. So pretty interesting.
Yeah, good point. Cool. So we're going to transition to the next phase, David. Here, Peter, what is the next round here?
Well, David, this is your chance to prove your trivia knowledge, the hard skill that's important to Peter and Ashwin.
All right.
We ask every guest to try to answer 5 questions in our search for the next trivia champion. So, are you ready?
All right.
All right, here we go. Your first question is airplane spotting. It's a little blurry for those of you that aren't. It's a triangular shaped landing light. Can you name the aircraft type that has this rounded triangular landing light?
Oh no. I'm just gonna take a while. Yes.
Sure, throw a guess.
737-800.
Oh no, I'm sorry. It is an Airbus though.
No.
The A350 has a very unique triangular shaped light. I think Airbus has been playing with their lighting because last time we had an A380 and it was a different shape. So they like their landing light shapes at Airbus. All right, next question is airports. Can you name 4 of the 6 airports in London, in the United Kingdom, that have commercial airline service?
Oh, let's see. Heathrow,
So 1,
Gatwick.
2,
What else is there? What's the Stanford?
3.
Stansted. Stansted.
But we'll
What
take.
else?
You fixed it, so that's a
Yeah.
solid 3.
Yeah, I was like, well, where's the other one I went to? London City, right?
That's 4. Hey, you did it. Do you want to keep going?
Hey, yeah. No, I don't know what the others are.
Oh, you got 4. Okay, that was very good. So the other 2
Oh,
are
Luton. Yeah.
Luton,
Okay, that was the one I was trying to think of. Yeah.
London
Okay.
Luton, and then London Southend. Very well
Okay.
done. You got
All right.
4. Okay.
An accomplishment.
Next question. Industry organizations. IATA is an airline trade association founded in 1945. Can you identify what the acronym IATA stands for? IATA.
I should know this. It's the International Airline Trade Association.
Oh,
No?
very good guess. It does fit the acronym, but it is not their official name.
No. What
is
is
the
it?
International Air
Transport.
Transport
Yeah, that's right.
Association.
Yeah. Yep.
You got the international. That's good. Good.
I wanted to put airlines because that's
Yes.
the main premise, right?
It is. It is. Excellent. All right. Number 4 question. ICAO codes. ASA, Alpha Sierra Alpha. Can you name this?
I was going to say the American Society of Appraisers. That's actually most aligned to what I do, which is another certification agency.
Oh my gosh! So this one,
but
I'll give a clue.
so I don't know.
It's not an acronym, and it is an airline.
Yeah, I have no idea.
All right. Alaska Airlines.
Well, that's never flown them.
ASA. Really? All right.
Yeah, never flown them. So
okay. Last question.
being based out of Seattle, right?
They are. Their headquarters is in Seattle. Yes. So okay, airlines. This is the only airline that operates nonstop flights from New Zealand and Melbourne, Australia to South America. So one of the few that flies the Southern Pole route.
Melbourne. ANZ.
That's a good guess. It is not.
It is not.
Ashwin, do you have a guess?
So it can't be an Australian or New Zealand carrier because it has to be a South American carrier. I'm gonna guess Copa, maybe.
Nope. LATAM.
Latam. Okay.
Latam.
LATAM. So they're flying from
Good thinking.
Santiago to Auckland and Santiago to Melbourne. So all right. Well done. You got 1 out of 5, David, which is better than some. So
Yeah, better than many, in fact. Yeah.
very good.
All right.
Thank you for joining us.
I was gonna say I would have thought it would have 0, but at least I got one of them.
You got one. Excellent.
That's cool. Well, that was fun. Thanks a lot, David. I think time has just flown by. And I think thanks for your unique perspective on this side of the industry. Really, we don't talk about it as much, but it's such an important part, right? Without the money, nothing really is going to happen in the industry, right? When you talk about aircraft and airlines and leasing, it's the money that really starts up things for an airline and then helps them to get the best rating and continue purchasing more aircraft as well, right? So thanks a lot for that perspective.
No, absolutely. Thanks for having me, and I hope this was helpful for some of the younger folks looking to get into the industry or exploring their options.
Excellent. Yeah. Thanks a lot. And we'll catch you soon.
Thanks for joining us this week. Send us any feedback, trivia ideas, or future topics you may have to our email at aeropedia.podcast@gmail.com. See you on the next leg of our journey.
Bye for now.
Mercury Heavy Heavy, contact departure 119.2. Good night.
49.2, speed at 290 heavy. Good night.